I was sitting in my corner office on the 14th floor when Dad called. He didn't ask how I was doing. He never does. Instead, he launched straight into demands about Ashley's wedding. When I hesitated, citing work commitments, his voice turned ice cold. If I didn't come home immediately, he'd stop paying my tuition. I stared at my dual monitors and the code I'd been reviewing. He had no idea I'd graduated summa cum laude 18 months ago, or that I now made $170,000 a year. The drive back to suburban Ohio took 6 hours, and every mile felt heavier than the last. I had plenty of time to think about how I'd ended up here, keeping my entire life a secret from the people who were supposed to know me best. Growing up, I was always the invisible daughter. Ashley, 3 years younger, got all the attention from the moment she could walk. She was the pretty one, the social one, the one who fit perfectly into Mom and Dad's vision of what a daughter should be. Homecoming queen, head cheerleader, president of 3 clubs she never actually did any work for. Meanwhile, I was the nerdy kid with thick glasses and braces who spent lunch period in the computer lab. It wasn't that I was ugly or unlikable. I just wasn't Ashley. And in our house, not being Ashley meant being nobody. Dad used to compare us constantly at the dinner table. Ashley would talk about some boy asking her to a dance, and Dad would beam with pride. Then he'd turn to me and sigh. Why can't you be more like your sister? Why don't you have more friends? When are you going to stop hiding behind those computers and live in the real world? Mom was more subtle, but equally damaging. She'd pick up my report cards, see straight A's including advanced placement courses, and murmur that it was nice, dear, before immediately pivoting to Ashley's latest social triumph. When I got accepted to a good public university with partial scholarship, Mom barely acknowledged it. But when Ashley got into the state school's most expensive program, they threw her a party and bought her a new car. They paid for everything for Ashley. Sorority fees, spring break trips, expensive textbooks she never opened, a laptop she used mostly for social media. For me, nothing. I worked 3 jobs through college. I waitressed at a diner, tutored math students, and did freelance coding on the side. I ate ramen most nights and wore the same 5 outfits on rotation. I took out $70,000 in student loans just to survive, and I never complained. I kept my head down, worked harder than anyone else, and told myself that one day it would pay off. It did pay off. I graduated top of my program, got recruited by a major tech company before graduation, and spent the last 18 months climbing the ladder faster than anyone expected. At 28, I was managing a team of 12 engineers and overseeing product launches that affected millions of users. I'd already paid off $20,000 of my loans, but I never told my family any of it. Why would I? They'd never asked. Every phone call home was Dad grunting hello and handing the phone to Mom, who'd spend 5 minutes talking about Ashley's latest Instagram photos before remembering I existed. Then she'd ask some vague question about school, not actually listening to my answer, before making an excuse to hang up. After graduation, they just assumed I was still taking classes part-time while working some internship. I didn't correct them. It felt easier that way. Less painful than fighting for acknowledgement I'd never receive. I pulled into the driveway just as the sun was setting. The house looked exactly the same. Same beige siding, same overgrown bushes Dad kept meaning to trim but never did. Same crooked mailbox from when Ashley backed into it 5 years ago, and everyone laughed it off as adorable clumsiness. Dad was in his recliner when I walked in, barely glancing up from the television. No hug, no welcome home, just a grunt that might have been hello. Mom appeared from the kitchen, hands fluttering with stress. She air-kissed near my cheek and immediately started listing everything I needed to do. Pick up the programs from the printer tomorrow morning. Help Ashley with her final dress fitting. Address invitations. Set up centerpieces. The list went on and on. Then Ashley made her entrance. She always knew how to make an entrance. She swept down the stairs in designer athleisure that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Her hair in perfect waves, makeup flawless, even though she was supposedly just lounging at home. Her engagement ring caught the light, a massive princess-cut diamond that she made sure to gesture with constantly. She hugged me with the enthusiasm of someone greeting a distant acquaintance they vaguely disliked. Her fiancé Brent followed behind her, tall and handsome in that generically wealthy way. His family owned half the commercial real estate in the county. Dad loved telling people about his successful future son-in-law. We sat down for dinner, and I realized nothing had changed. Ashley dominated the conversation, talking about wedding plans, her honeymoon to Bali, the house Brent's parents were helping them buy. Mom and Dad hung on every word. I might as well have been wallpaper. When Mom finally remembered to ask me about school, Ashley interrupted before I could answer. She announced that she needed me for a dress fitting tomorrow and had already volunteered me to be a bridesmaid. When I mentioned I might need to take some work calls during the day, Ashley rolled her eyes so dramatically I thought they might fall out of her head. Still, pretending that little internship is a real job? God, Sarah, when are you going to grow up and get a real career? Dad laughed. Actually laughed. Mom smiled indulgently and patted Ashley's hand like she'd said something clever rather than cruel. I felt something crack inside my chest, but I kept my face neutral. That little internship they were mocking had ended 4 years ago. I was now a senior software engineer managing multi-million-dollar projects. But they didn't know that. And sitting there at that table, I couldn't bring myself to tell them. Then Ashley delivered the final blow with casual cruelty. Oh, and Brent's cousin works in human resources at some tech company. Maybe he can help you get an entry-level job after you finally finish school. The condescension in her voice was suffocating. Brent nodded along supportively, clearly thinking he was being helpful. Dad perked up like this was the best idea he'd heard all week. Mom was already asking Ashley for details. No one asked me if I wanted help. No one asked what company I worked for or what I did. They just assumed I was struggling, failing, still trying to figure out the basics of adult life while Ashley had it all together. I excused myself before dessert, claiming exhaustion from the drive. My childhood bedroom was exactly as I'd left it a decade ago. Boy band posters, a twin bed with a purple comforter, participation trophies from middle school science fairs lining a shelf. Meanwhile, Ashley's room had been renovated 3 times. I sat on the edge of that small bed and let myself cry quietly, something I hadn't done in years. Not for the job I loved or the success I'd earned, but for the fact that none of it mattered here. In this house, I would always be the disappointing daughter, the one who couldn't quite measure up, the shadow behind Ashley's spotlight. I didn't know it then, but that night was just the beginning. Things were about to get so much worse. I woke at 7 to Mom barging in without knocking, announcing that Ashley needed me immediately. There was no good morning, no asking if I'd slept well, just demands. Over the next 3 days, I became Ashley's personal assistant. She had me running errands all over town, treating me like hired help rather than her sister. I picked up her dry cleaning from the expensive place downtown. I made 3 trips to the coffee shop because she kept changing her mind about what she wanted. I returned shoes she'd worn once and scuffed, spending 40 minutes arguing with a store manager who could clearly see they'd been damaged. The bridal shop fitting was its own special humiliation. Ashley had chosen bridesmaid dresses in a shade of peach that looked good on absolutely no one, but especially not me. When I stepped out of the dressing room, Ashley circled me like a predator examining wounded prey. "Perfect," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I want to make sure no one outshines me on my big day, and this dress guarantees that." The saleswoman looked uncomfortable but said nothing. 2 other bridesmaids, Ashley's college friends, giggled. I stood there in that hideous dress, seeing myself in the 3-way mirror, and felt like I was 16 again, awkward and invisible and wrong. The bachelorette party planning was worse. I had to sit in Ashley's living room while she and 6 friends discussed party ideas. They talked around me like I wasn't there, making inside jokes and referencing people I didn't know. When they finally acknowledged me, it was only to make digs. One of them, a woman named Courtney with too much filler in her lips, laughed and said, "Remember when we tried to set Sarah up with that guy in college? What was his name? The one who worked at the campus bookstore?" They all cackled. Ashley grinned. "Oh my God, yes. He never called her back. Sarah, you went on one date with him and probably talked about math the whole time." More laughter. I smiled tightly and said nothing. The truth was, I dated plenty in college, just never anyone they'd approved of or knew about. But explaining that would require them to care, which they didn't. The worst task was addressing wedding invitations. 250 invitations had to be handwritten in perfect calligraphy. Ashley claimed she was too busy to help, so she went to a spa day with Mom while I sat at their dining room table for hours, carefully addressing envelopes until my hand cramped. My phone kept ringing with work calls. My team was approaching a critical deadline, and they needed my input on several decisions. But every time I reached for my phone, Ashley would appear out of nowhere and snatch it away. "No phones during family time," she'd say sweetly. "Your little school project can wait. This is important." I wanted to scream that my school project was actually a product launch affecting 3 million users and representing 15 months of work. But I bit my tongue and kept addressing invitations. Then, about halfway through the stack, I found something that made my stomach drop. Among the RSVP cards was one addressed to Dr. Catherine Morrison. I stared at the name, my hands going cold. Dr. Morrison had been my thesis advisor in graduate school. She'd mentored me, believed in me, written the glowing recommendation that got me my first job. She was now a vice president at a major Silicon Valley firm, and she knew exactly who I was and what I'd accomplished. I found Ashley in her bedroom, trying on accessories. "Why is Dr. Morrison on the guest list?" Ashley barely looked up from her mirror. "Oh, Brent's family knows her somehow. Business connection or whatever. Dad thought it would be good networking for me. You know, for when I start my influencer career after the wedding." My heart was pounding. Dr. Morrison knew the truth about my education, my job, my entire life. If she came to this wedding and saw how my family treated me, it would be mortifying. She'd see me being dismissed and degraded, and she'd know I'd been hiding my success like something shameful. Even worse, what if the truth came out? What if Dr. Morrison mentioned my job or my accomplishments in front of everyone, at Ashley's wedding? It would look like I was trying to steal her spotlight. It would confirm everything Ashley accused me of, every resentful look she'd been giving me since I arrived. I was trapped. If I stayed silent, I'd be humiliated. If the truth came out, I'd be vilified. There was no winning. That night, I lay in my childhood bed and stared at the glow in the dark stars on the ceiling, the same ones I'd put up when I was 12. I felt like I was drowning, pulled down by the weight of expectations I couldn't meet and accomplishments no one valued. I thought about leaving, just packing my bag and driving back to my real life, where people respected me and valued my work. But Dad's threat about tuition hung over me. Even though I didn't need his money, the idea of being formally disowned, of having that final door slammed shut, felt unbearable. So I stayed. I kept my mouth shut, kept addressing invitations, kept playing the role of the disappointing daughter who couldn't quite get her life together. I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. The engagement party was held at Brent's family's country club, the kind of place with valet parking and a waiting list to join. 150 guests milled around a lavishly decorated ballroom. I felt out of place the moment I walked in. I'd brought one nice dress with me, a simple navy sheath that was appropriate for my corporate job, but looked plain and cheap next to the designer outfits everyone else wore. Ashley was stunning in a white cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her hair professionally styled, her makeup airbrushed to perfection. Brent's parents were old money personified. His father, Richard, owned a commercial real estate empire. His mother, Patricia, sat on the boards of 4 charities and spoke with the kind of refined accent that came from expensive boarding schools. They were polite but distant, evaluating me with the practiced assessment of people who were very good at determining social hierarchies. Dad was in rare form, desperately trying to impress the future in-laws. He followed Richard around like a puppy, laughing too loud at jokes that weren't funny and bragging about Ashley's accomplishments. Of course, Ashley's accomplishments were mostly aesthetic. She was pretty, she was charming, she'd graduated college eventually with a communications degree she'd never used. But Dad made it sound like she'd cured diseases. I stood near the bar, nursing a glass of wine and trying to be invisible. Then Patricia approached me with a kind smile. "And what do you do, Sarah?" It was a simple question, the kind people ask at parties. I opened my mouth to answer, to finally tell someone the truth. But before I could speak, Dad materialized at my elbow. "Sarah's still in school," he said with an indulgent chuckle, taking her time figuring things out. "Not everyone can be as focused as Ashley." Patricia nodded politely. I forced a smile and said nothing, the words I'd been about to say dying in my throat. Dad squeezed my shoulder in what probably looked affectionate but felt like a warning. Ashley drifted over, radiant and glowing with attention. She slid her arm around my shoulders in a gesture that looked sisterly but felt possessive. "Sarah's the academic one," she announced to the small group that had gathered. "All books, no life experience. I keep telling her she needs to live a little." People laughed. It was the kind of laugh you give when someone says something vaguely uncomfortable but you're too polite to question it. I stood there, my face burning, and wanted to disappear. I excused myself and retreated to the bathroom, locking myself in a stall and focusing on breathing. This was temporary. The wedding would happen, I'd go back to my real life, and I'd never have to do this again. I just had to survive a few more days. But when I emerged from the bathroom, I saw her. Dr. Catherine Morrison had just arrived, fashionably late in an elegant black pantsuit. She was distinguished and confident, every inch the successful executive. And the moment she spotted me across the room, her face lit up with genuine warmth. "No, no, no, no." She walked directly toward me, weaving through the crowd with purpose. I felt panic rising in my chest. I wanted to run, to hide, to somehow prevent what was about to happen, but there was nowhere to go. "Sarah!" She embraced me warmly, the kind of hug mentors give their favorite students. "What a wonderful surprise. I had no idea you were related to the bride." I tried to return her greeting quietly, to somehow signal that this wasn't a good time, that I needed her to not say anything. But Dr. Morrison was excited to see me, genuinely happy, and she had no idea she was about to detonate a bomb. "How is everything at the company? Your team's product launch last quarter was brilliant." The board was incredibly impressed. The conversations around us stopped. I felt multiple sets of eyes turn our way. Dad's face showed confusion. Ashley stopped mid-sentence in whatever story she'd been telling. Brent's parents looked interested, leaning in slightly to hear better. "Dr. Morrison," I started, my voice weak. "It's so nice to see you." But she continued, beaming with pride. "Are you being modest? You should tell your family. The work you're doing is revolutionary, and making senior engineer at 28? Remarkable. Your parents must be so proud." The silence that followed was deafening. Ashley's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, realization, then fury. Dad looked like he'd been slapped. Mom had gone pale. Brent's parents exchanged glances. Ashley's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Senior engineer? Sarah, what is she talking about? You're still finishing your bachelor's degree." I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me. I tried to explain, to somehow minimize the situation, but my words came out in a stammered mess. Dr. Morrison, finally sensing something was wrong but not understanding what, tried to help. "Sarah graduated top of our program 18 months ago," she said, looking between me and my family with growing confusion. "Summa cum laude. I wrote her recommendation for the tech position myself. She's one of the most talented engineers I've ever mentored." Ashley's face turned scarlet. "You lied to us?" Dad stepped forward, his voice loud enough that people were definitely staring now. What the hell is going on, Sarah? I tried to explain. I tried to say that I hadn't lied, that they'd assumed and never asked, that I'd tried to tell them but they'd never listened. But the words tangled on my tongue, inadequate and defensive. Ashley's eyes were filling with tears, the kind she could produce on command. You deliberately deceived us? You let us think you needed help? That you were struggling? And all this time you were making what? How much? How much are you making, Sarah? I couldn't answer. My throat had closed up completely. Ashley turned to the crowd, playing the victim perfectly. I can't believe this. My own sister has been lying to us for over a year, and she chooses to reveal it now? At my engagement party? She can't let me have one thing. One day that's supposed to be about me. She was crying now, real tears mixing with the calculated ones. Brent put his arm around her protectively. Mom rushed to her side, murmuring comfort. Dad was still staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Brent's parents looked uncomfortable, clearly not understanding the family dynamic, but sensing they'd walked into something ugly. Other guests were whispering, phones probably already out to document the drama. You need to leave, Ashley said, her voice breaking. Get out. This is my day, and you have to make it about you, just like you always do. That wasn't true. That was the opposite of true. But no one was listening to me. No one had ever listened to me. Dr. Morrison touched my arm gently, her face stricken. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't realize. It's not your fault, I managed to say. Then I walked out of that country club with as much dignity as I could gather, which wasn't much. I felt eyes on me the whole way, heard the whispers starting, saw Ashley crying dramatically in Brent's arms. Dr. Morrison followed me to the parking lot, apologizing profusely. I assured her she'd done nothing wrong, that this wasn't her fault, that my family situation was complicated. She hugged me goodbye, still looking concerned, and I drove back to my parents' house alone. I'd done nothing wrong. I'd built a successful career, graduated with honors, achieved everything I'd worked for. But somehow, I was the villain. Ashley was the victim. And I was more alone than I'd ever been. The worst part, a small, traitorous part of me had hoped that when the truth came out, maybe my parents would be proud. Maybe they'd finally see me. I should have known better. I returned to my parents' house around 10 that night, exhausted and emotionally destroyed. The moment I pulled into the driveway, I knew something was wrong. The porch light was off. That had always been my signal growing up, that I wasn't welcome home yet, that I'd broken some unspoken rule. I got out of my car and walked to the front door. It was locked. I knocked, quietly at first, then louder. Finally, the door swung open to reveal Dad, his face hard and cold. My suitcase came flying past his shoulder and hit the porch with a thud. Then my work bag. Then the small duffel I'd packed toiletries in. All my belongings thrown out like trash. You can find somewhere else to stay, Dad said. I stared at him. Dad, please? Let me explain. Explain what? That you've been lying to us for 18 months? That you made fools of us in front of the Harrisons? That you humiliated your sister at her own engagement party? I didn't lie to you. I tried to keep my voice steady. You assumed I was still in school. You never asked about my life. Every time I tried to tell you about work, you changed the subject or dismissed it. Mom appeared behind him, her face red from crying. You deliberately deceived us. You let us think we were supporting you. Something inside me snapped. You haven't given me a dime in 4 years. I'm paying off $70,000 in student loans that I took out because you wouldn't help me. You paid for everything for Ashley, but I had to work 3 jobs just to eat. Don't you dare bring your sister into this, Dad snarled. Ashley never lied to us. I didn't lie, I shouted, my composure finally cracking. I just stopped trying to tell you about accomplishments you didn't care about. Then Ashley appeared in the doorway, mascara streaked down her perfect face. She looked genuinely devastated, and I felt a flicker of guilt before I remembered how calculated she could be. You couldn't let me have one thing, could you? Her voice was small, wounded. You had to upstage me at my own engagement party. My own sister, stealing my moment. Do you know how humiliating that was? Everyone was talking about you instead of me. At my party. That's not what I wanted, I said. But my words felt useless. Dad's voice was final. You're not welcome at the wedding. In fact, don't contact any of us until you're ready to apologize to your sister and explain yourself properly. The door slammed in my face. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed door of the house I'd grown up in. Then I gathered my bags, threw them in my car, and drove to the nearest hotel. I paid for 3 nights with my credit card and sat on the generic hotel bed, too shocked to cry. I'd expected anger. I'd even expected some confusion. But being thrown out of the house, being told I wasn't welcome at the wedding, being treated like I'd committed some unforgivable crime, that hadn't been on my radar. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying the evening, trying to figure out what I could have done differently. But every scenario ended the same way. There was no version of this story where I won. The next morning, Saturday, I woke to an email that made my blood run cold. It was from my company's human resources department. The subject line read, "Urgent. Administrative review required." I opened it with shaking hands. The email informed me that a formal complaint had been filed regarding my professional credentials and conduct. The complaint alleged that I had misrepresented my educational background during the hiring process and had been engaging in activities that created workplace disruption. The complaint had been filed anonymously, but included detailed information that suggested insider knowledge. I was being placed on immediate administrative leave, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. I'd been locked out of all my work systems. I was instructed not to contact my team directly. The investigation would take approximately 2 weeks. My product launch was in 2 weeks. My team depended on me. This could destroy my career. I read the email 3 times, trying to make sense of it. Who would do this? Who had both the motivation and the information to file such a detailed, damaging complaint? Then it hit me. Someone from my family had contacted my employer. Someone had decided that humiliating me at the engagement party wasn't enough. They wanted to destroy my career too. I tried calling HR, but it was Saturday. No answer. I tried reaching my boss, but his phone went to voicemail. I sent frantic emails that bounced back with automated messages about my suspended access. I was trapped in a hotel room, cut off from my job, estranged from my family, with no way to defend myself until Monday at the earliest. Then I made the mistake of checking social media. Ashley had posted a long emotional statement on her public accounts. It was a masterpiece of manipulation, carefully worded to make her the victim while painting me as a villain. She wrote about family betrayal, about discovering that someone close to her had been living a double life and lying for over a year. She didn't name me directly, but anyone who followed her knew exactly who she meant. She talked about the pain of being upstaged at her own celebration, about how hard it was to trust people when even your own family could deceive you. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. Hundreds of people I'd never met were calling me names, telling Ashley she deserved better, praising her strength and grace. Some of our extended family members had chimed in, shocked and disappointed by my behavior. Old high school acquaintances were commenting, saying they'd always known something was off about me. Ashley had twisted the entire narrative. In her version, I was a con artist who'd been scamming the family while secretly making money. She made it sound like I'd been taking financial support under false pretenses, which was completely untrue. But truth didn't matter. The story was out there, spreading, taking on a life of its own. I watched my phone light up with notifications, distant relatives unfriending me, old classmates sending messages asking if it was true, even a few people from college reaching out, confused and curious about the drama. I turned off my phone and lay in that hotel bed, staring at the ceiling. I'd worked so hard to build a life I was proud of. I'd overcome every obstacle, paid my own way, earned my success through relentless effort. And now, in the span of 24 hours, both my career and my family relationships were in ruins. The smart thing would have been to give up, to apologize even though I'd done nothing wrong, to beg for forgiveness, and crawl back into my designated role as the disappointing daughter who knew her place. But something in me refused. Some stubborn core that had gotten me through 3 jobs and $70,000 in debt, that had pushed me to graduate at the top of my class, that had earned me a corner office at 28. That part of me knew I deserved better than this. I just had no idea how to fight back. Not yet. Monday morning arrived, and I finally got through to my company's human resources department. The conversation was professional but chilling. A woman named Gloria, who I'd only met twice, explained the situation with careful neutrality. The anonymous complaint had included very specific allegations. It claimed I'd fabricated my graduate degree, lied about my credentials during the interview process, and had been using company resources for personal gain. It also suggested I'd been involved in unethical conduct that violated our corporate code. None of it was true, but someone had provided enough detailed information to make it sound plausible. They'd referenced specific dates, projects, and even quoted things from my personnel file. Whoever filed this complaint had done their homework. "I have all my documentation," I told Gloria, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "My transcripts, my diploma, my thesis. Everything is legitimate." "I'm sure it is," Gloria said kindly. "But we still have to complete the investigation. It's policy. These things take time." "How much time?" 2 weeks minimum. Maybe longer, if we need additional verification. "My product launch is in 2 weeks. There was a pause. "I know. I'm sorry, Sarah. Your manager has been informed. Your team will handle it." My team needed me. I'd spent 15 months developing this product, guiding every decision, fighting for resources and budget. And now I was being erased from it because of a false accusation from my own family. Over the next week, I fought to clear my name. I submitted every piece of documentation I could find. I provided references from professors and previous employers. I wrote detailed explanations of every project I'd worked on, every decision I'd made, every line of code I'd contributed. But the damage was already done. I could see it in the careful language of the emails I received, in the way Gloria chose her words. Even if I was cleared, and everyone seemed confident I would be, there would be whispers. Colleagues would remember this investigation. My boss would always have that small seed of doubt. My reputation, which I'd spent years building, was tarnished. Meanwhile, Ashley's wedding preparations continued without me. I saw the updates on social media, each one a knife twist. Mom posted photos of helping Ashley with last-minute details. Dad shared a proud father of the bride message about his beautiful daughter finding her perfect match. Extended family members posted about flying in for the celebration. No one mentioned me. It was like I'd been erased from the family entirely. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, I received a Facebook message from someone I didn't know, a woman named Jenny Carson. The message was long and started with an apology. She explained that she'd gone to high school with Ashley. They'd been best friends freshmen through junior year. Then, senior year, Jenny had been accepted to an Ivy League school with a full scholarship. It was a huge achievement, especially for their small town. Ashley had been furious. She'd started spreading rumors that Jenny had cheated to get in, that her parents had bribed someone, that she'd slept with a teacher for recommendation letters. The rumors were vicious and persistent. Jenny's senior year became a nightmare. She almost turned down the scholarship because the social pressure was so intense. But she'd gone anyway, cutting ties with Ashley and most of their hometown. She'd built a successful career, moved far away, and tried to forget about it. Then, she'd seen Ashley's recent social media posts about family betrayal and recognized the pattern immediately. "I wanted you to know," Jenny wrote, "that this is what Ashley does. She can't handle anyone outshining her. She needs to be the center of attention, the successful one, the special one. And when someone threatens that, she destroys them. I'm sorry this is happening to you. I know exactly how it feels. The message included screenshots. Old messages where Ashley had explicitly discussed her strategy for ruining Jenny's reputation. Texts to mutual friends, asking them to spread specific rumors. Even a diary entry Ashley had posted on LiveJournal back when that was still a thing, talking about how she needed to put Jenny in her place. It was calculated, deliberate, and chilling. More people reached out over the next few days. A girl from Ashley's college who'd been her roommate until Ashley decided she was getting too much attention from boys. A coworker from Ashley's brief stint at a marketing agency who'd been forced out after Ashley spread lies about her work performance. Even one of our distant cousins who'd been ostracized from family events after Ashley decided she was a threat. The pattern was clear. Ashley had been doing this for years, and our parents had enabled it every single time, either believing Ashley's lies or choosing to ignore the truth because it was easier. I felt sick reading these messages. My entire childhood suddenly made sense. The way opportunities seemed to disappear for me. The way people at school had treated me strangely sometimes. The way family members had been distant. How much of that had been Ashley's manipulation? But knowing the truth didn't fix my immediate problems. I was still on administrative leave. I was still banned from my sister's wedding. I was still the family scapegoat. Then I decided to do something I should have done years ago. I started digging into Ashley's life, really looking at what she'd been claiming about herself. Her influencer career? She had 312 followers on Instagram, mostly family and high school friends. Her posts got maybe 20 likes each. There was no brand sponsorship, no actual influence. It was a fantasy. Her charity work? She'd attended one gala last year and posted extensively about it. That was it. No volunteering, no fundraising, no actual charitable activities. Her job history? She'd worked at that marketing agency for 3 months before being let go. Before that, a series of retail jobs that never lasted more than 6 months. She'd been unemployed for the last year, living off credit cards and occasional gifts from our parents. Brent's family didn't know the real Ashley. They knew the version she'd presented. Successful, accomplished, charitable. They had no idea they were getting a daughter-in-law who'd spent the last decade tearing people down to make herself feel superior. But the most devastating discovery came when I was going through old emails, looking for documentation for my HR investigation. I found something I'd forgotten about. 6 years ago, I'd applied to a graduate program at a prestigious university. I'd been told I wasn't accepted, but buried in my spam folder was an acceptance letter I'd never seen. It had arrived the same week I'd been home for Christmas, using my parents' address as my mailing address since I was between apartments. Ashley had been home that week too. Ashley, who had access to our shared family computer where my email account was still logged in from helping Dad with something technical. The acceptance had gone to spam, probably marked as such from that computer. I'd never seen it. I'd missed the opportunity of a lifetime because of a spam filter and an email I'd never known about. I couldn't prove Ashley had done it deliberately, but given everything else I now knew about her, I couldn't convince myself it was coincidence either. I sat in that hotel room, surrounded by evidence of my sister's systematic cruelty, and felt the full weight of betrayal. My family hadn't just failed to see me. They'd actively enabled someone who'd been sabotaging me for years. The wedding was in 5 days. I wasn't invited. My career was in limbo. My family had cut me off, and I had a choice to make. I could walk away completely, move to a new city, cut all ties, start fresh where no one knew my history or my shame. It would be easier, cleaner, or I could fight back. The HR investigation concluded on Thursday. I was officially cleared of all charges. Gloria called me personally to deliver the news, her voice warm with relief. Everything checked out, Sarah. Your credentials are legitimate, your work history is exemplary, and we found no evidence of any misconduct. You're reinstated effective immediately, with full back pay. I should have felt relieved. But Gloria's next words deflated that hope. However, your manager wanted me to convey that given the disruption this has caused, and the upcoming product launch happening without your direct involvement. He thinks it might be beneficial for you to take a voluntary sabbatical for a few months, just to let things cool down. Your position will be waiting for you when you return. I understood what that meant. I was being quietly pushed aside. The investigation had been resolved, but the damage to my reputation remained. My team had successfully completed the product launch without me. They'd proved they didn't need me. Coming back now would be awkward for everyone. The launch happened on Friday. I watched from my hotel room as my team presented the product to stakeholders and clients. 15 months of my life, my code, my decisions, my vision. The presentation was flawless. The product was exactly what I'd designed it to be. My name wasn't mentioned once. That same day, I received a registered letter at my hotel. It was from a lawyer representing my father. The letter formally demanded repayment of $30,000 in loans Dad claimed he'd given me during college. I read the letter 3 times, confused and then furious. Dad had never given me any money, not $1. I had bank statements proving I'd paid for everything myself. But the letter included documentation, loan agreements with my signature, receipts for payments supposedly made to my account. They were forgeries, crude ones. My signature was wrong. The dates didn't match up with when I was actually in school. The bank account numbers were incorrect. But fighting it would require hiring my own lawyer, spending money I couldn't spare, and dragging this out for months. The letter stated that if I didn't pay or agree to certain terms, which included a public written apology to Ashley and an admission of wrongdoing, legal action would be taken. I was being blackmailed by my own father. I sat on the hotel bed, staring at that letter, and realized I'd reached the bottom. My career was in tatters. My family had disowned me. I was being legally threatened with fabricated debts. And Ashley's wedding was tomorrow, where she'd celebrate her perfect life while I hid in a hotel room like a criminal. I could walk away. I could move across the country, change my phone number, disappear from these people's lives completely. Part of me wanted to do exactly that. But another part of me, the part that had survived 3 jobs and student loan debt and systemic dismissal, refused to give up. My phone rang. Dr. Morrison. I almost didn't answer, still embarrassed by the engagement party disaster. But I picked up. Sarah, I've been worried about you. How are you holding up? I've been better, I admitted. Listen, she said. I need to tell you something. Patricia Harrison called me, Brent's mother. We serve on a charity board together. She wanted to know more about you, about what I said at the engagement party. I think she suspects something is off with your family dynamic, but she's not sure what. Dr. Morrison paused. I told her the truth, Sarah. About your education, your career, your accomplishments. She was very surprised. She said the family had given her a completely different impression of you. What did she say? She wants to speak with you. Before the wedding. She specifically asked if you'd be willing to meet with her tomorrow morning. My heart started racing. Why? I think she's having second thoughts about this wedding. Or at least, she wants to understand the full picture. She's a smart woman, Sarah. She knows when something doesn't add up. This was it. A chance to tell my side of the story, to have someone actually listen. But the timing was terrible. The wedding was tomorrow afternoon. If I met with Brent's mother, if the truth came out, it would explode everything right before Ashley walked down the aisle. Part of me wanted that explosion, wanted Ashley to face consequences for once in her life. But another part of me, the part that had been raised to keep the peace and not make waves, hesitated. Dr. Morrison sensed my uncertainty. Sarah, I know this is complicated, but you deserve to have your story heard. What they've done to you is wrong. You don't owe them protection. She was right. I didn't owe my family anything. They'd thrown me out, destroyed my reputation at work, legally threatened me, and publicly humiliated me. They'd done everything possible to punish me for the crime of being successful without their permission. I made my decision. I'll meet with her, I said. Tomorrow morning, before the wedding. That night, I compiled everything. The documentation of my education and career, the messages from Jenny and the others showing Ashley's pattern of behavior, the fake loan documents from my father, the evidence of the false HR complaint filed through Brent's cousin, screenshots of Ashley's social media posts twisting the narrative, bank statements proving I'd received no financial support. I organized it all into a clear, factual timeline. No emotion, no blame, just facts. I also wrote something for myself. Not to share, but to clarify my own thoughts. I wrote about what I wanted from this meeting. Not revenge, not to ruin the wedding, just to be seen, to be heard, to have someone, anyone, acknowledge that I'd been treated unfairly. And if that meant the wedding was disrupted or postponed, if it meant Ashley finally faced consequences, I could live with that. The wedding was tomorrow. My family thought I was defeated, hiding in shame. They had no idea I was about to walk into the eye of the storm with the truth as my only weapon. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than pain or fear. I felt powerful. I met Patricia Harrison at a quiet restaurant Saturday morning, 8 hours before the wedding. She arrived exactly on time, impeccably dressed in a cream suit. Dr. Morrison came with me for moral support, sitting at a nearby table to give us privacy but close enough to help if needed. Patricia ordered coffee and looked at me with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Tell me your story, Sarah, the real one." So I did. I told her everything. Growing up invisible in Ashley's shadow, working 3 jobs through college while my parents paid for Ashley's sorority experience, graduating summa cum laude, and building a career I was proud of, keeping it secret because my family had never valued my achievements anyway. The engagement party disaster, being thrown out of my house, the false HR complaint that had nearly destroyed my career, the fabricated loan demands, Ashley's pattern of tearing down anyone who outshined her. I showed her the documentation, the messages from Jenny and others, the bank statements, the fake loan papers, the timeline of how everything had unfolded. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat back and was quiet for a long moment. "I had suspicions," she finally said. Small things that didn't add up. Ashley's resume was impressive on paper, but when I tried to verify details, nothing quite matched. The charity work she claimed was one event. The influencer career was non-existent. She has $60,000 in credit card debt she hasn't told Brent about. I hadn't known that last part, but I wasn't surprised. Patricia continued. "And your father has been aggressively pushing for Brent's family to invest in Ashley's lifestyle. He's asked Richard for money twice. We declined politely, but it raised red flags." She looked at me directly. "I believe you, Sarah. I believe all of this. And I'm grateful you came to me with the truth." My throat tightened with emotion. It was the first time since this nightmare began that someone had actually believed me without question. Patricia pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Brent. He needs to know who he's marrying. This wedding needs to be postponed at minimum, until we sort this out." "Wait," I said. "I didn't come here to ruin the wedding." "You didn't ruin anything," Patricia said firmly. "Your sister's lies and your father's manipulation did that. If Brent marries into this family without knowing the truth, he'll spend years dealing with the fallout. Better he knows now." She made the call. I sat there, listening to her calmly explain to her son that he needed to come to the restaurant immediately, that it was urgent, that it was about his fiancé's family. 30 minutes later, Brent arrived looking confused and worried. Ashley was with him, already in tears, somehow knowing something was wrong. When Ashley saw me sitting with Patricia, her face went through a rapid sequence of emotions. Shock, fear, anger, then settling into wounded victim. "What is she doing here?" Ashley's voice shook. "On my wedding day? Patricia, she's been lying to everyone. She's trying to ruin my life." "Sit down, Ashley," Patricia said. Her voice was kind but firm. "Both of you, we need to talk." What followed was 2 hours of painful truth. Patricia laid out everything I'd shown her. Brent listened, his face growing paler and more shocked. Ashley tried to maintain her victim narrative, but the evidence was overwhelming. When confronted with the messages showing her pattern of destroying people, Ashley claimed they were taken out of context. When shown the fake loan documents, she tried to blame our father. When faced with the HR complaint filed through Brent's cousin, she broke down crying and claimed she'd only been trying to protect the family from my lies. But Brent wasn't buying it anymore. I watched him see his fiancée clearly for perhaps the first time. It was painful to witness. "You filed a false complaint with my cousin to destroy Sarah's career?" His voice was quiet but horrified. "I thought she was lying," Ashley sobbed. "I thought I was doing the right thing." My father arrived next, summoned by Patricia. He blustered and defended Ashley, but when confronted with the forged loan documents, he had no good explanation. His anger turned defensive, then desperate. Then, I did something I should have done weeks ago. I spoke directly to my father, looking him in the eye. "You threw me out of the house for being successful. You've spent my entire life making me feel less than, comparing me to Ashley, dismissing everything I achieved. I worked 3 jobs to pay for college, because you wouldn't help me. I graduated top of my class. I built a career I'm proud of. And your response was to legally threaten me with fake debts and enable Ashley in destroying my professional reputation." I felt tears on my face, but I didn't stop. "I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need you to finally see me or value me. But I also won't be blamed for Ashley's insecurities or let her destroy what I've built. I'm done being invisible in this family." To Ashley, I said, "I hope you have a happy marriage if this wedding still happens. But I'm done being your scapegoat. Find someone else to tear down when you feel threatened." My father started to speak, but Patricia cut him off. "I think you all need to leave now. Brent and Ashley have a lot to discuss. Sarah, would you stay, please?" The 3 of them left, Ashley crying dramatically, my father angry and defensive, Brent looking shell-shocked. Patricia turned to me once they were gone. "The wedding is postponed. Brent needs time to process this and decide if he wants to move forward. As for you, what do you need?" "I need to know I did the right thing," I said quietly. "You did." She squeezed my hand. "You told the truth. What happens next isn't your responsibility." Dr. Morrison came over and hugged me. "I'm proud of you," she said. The wedding didn't happen that day. Brent and Ashley went to couples counseling. Last I heard, they're still engaged, but the wedding is on hold indefinitely. Brent insisted on counseling first, and Ashley is fighting it every step of the way. My father quietly dropped the fake loan demands after Patricia's lawyer sent him a strongly worded letter. He and my mother have reached out once, a brief email saying they want to talk when everyone has calmed down. I haven't responded yet. Maybe I will eventually. Maybe I won't. But here's what did happen. My company reinstated me fully with an apology and a promotion. My former boss, embarrassed by how the investigation was handled, recommended me for a role at the company's new office in Seattle. It's a bigger team, better pay, more responsibility. I accepted. I moved across the country. New city, fresh start, no baggage. I found a great apartment with a view of the water. I joined a gym and made friends. I started therapy to process everything that happened. Dr. Morrison became more than a mentor. She's a friend now. We have dinner once a month, and she's introduced me to other successful women in tech who've become a kind of chosen family. I'm dating someone I met through work. He's kind and funny and thinks my intelligence is sexy rather than threatening. He knows my whole story and still thinks I'm amazing. My parents send occasional emails. They're starting to acknowledge, very slowly, that they treated me unfairly. They want to rebuild the relationship. I'm not sure I want that, but I've left the door open a crack, on my terms. Ashley and I don't speak. I've blocked her on all social media. I heard through my mother that Ashley told everyone the wedding was postponed due to venue issues, refusing to take any responsibility. Some things never change. But I've changed. I learned something through all of this pain. You can't control how other people see you, especially if they're determined to see you as less than you are. I spent years trying to earn love and approval from people who were never going to give it. My parents had decided who I was supposed to be, and when I didn't fit that mold, they dismissed me. Ashley needed a victim to feel superior to, and I filled that role for too long. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who genuinely see you, value you, and celebrate your success instead of resenting it. I spent 28 years thinking my family would eventually recognize my worth. When they didn't, I thought something was wrong with me. But nothing was wrong with me. Something was wrong with them. Success isn't about proving yourself to people who've already decided you're not enough. It's about building a life that fulfills you, with people who love you for who you actually are. I don't need my father's approval or my sister's acceptance. I don't need to be anyone's golden child or favorite daughter. I just need to be myself. And that's enough. The last time my mother called, she asked when I was coming home for a visit. I looked around my Seattle apartment, at the life I'd built 3,000 miles away from that toxic dynamic, and I realized something. I am home. Finally. Leaving wasn't giving up or running away. It was choosing myself for the first time in my life. It was refusing to shrink to make others comfortable. It was understanding that some battles aren't worth fighting because the only way to win is to leave the battlefield entirely. I'll always be a little sad about losing my family of origin, but I'm building something better now, a life where I'm valued, respected, and loved, where my achievements are celebrated, not resented, where I don't have to hide my success or dim my light to avoid making others feel small. And you know what? I'm happier than I've ever been. Some people will never give you the validation you deserve. Some families are too broken to heal. Some relationships are too toxic to save. And that's okay. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose peace over proving yourself. You're allowed to build a new family from the people who actually appreciate you. The best revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's living well without them. It's refusing to let their limitations define your worth. It's building a beautiful life in spite of their attempts to tear you down. I have that now, and I'm never going back. So if you're in a situation where you feel invisible, dismissed, or constantly compared to someone else, please hear this. Your worth isn't determined by people who can't see it. Your success doesn't need to be validated by those who resent it. You don't owe anyone an apology for being talented, ambitious, or accomplished. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to appreciate you. Sometimes the healthiest choice is to stop fighting for scraps of affection from people who should have loved you unconditionally. You deserve better, and you're allowed to go find it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where your family didn't recognize or support your success? How did you handle it? Did you stay and fight for acceptance? Or did you choose to walk away and build something new? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding your own path. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to choose yourself. And remember, you're not alone in this. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it brought you some comfort, some clarity, or at least the knowledge that you're not the only one navigating complicated family dynamics. Be kind to yourself, set boundaries that protect your peace, and never apologize for being successful. You've earned everything you've achieved, and anyone who can't celebrate that doesn't deserve a place in your life. Take care of yourselves. You're worth it.